Today's show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch that we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their Pitch Right pouches are jam-packed with over 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers who live to help other brewers learn more and ferment better. Join any recipe receiving tier of our Super Duper Homebrew Club and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at homebrewhappyhour.com/club and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Discussing all about the new G40 Grainfather and lots more with Matt Bolling from Bevie. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 258. Hello and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I'm joined by the oh my goodness, I'm brain farting. The director of operations at cmbecker.com down there, Mr. James Carlson. Sorry, Mr. James Carlson. As well as I'm just flustered. As well as the chief keg washer and president of kegconnection.com, Mr. Todd Burns over my shoulder. But also, we have Matt Bolling back on the show. Different context, but Matt Bolling is the North American marketing manager for Bevie, the company that is behind some of our favorite brands, such as the Grainfather range of electric all-in-one brewing systems. Matt, my friend, thank you for coming back on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Joshua and Todd and James. I love what you guys do with the show, and really happy to be back. So thank you,
man. Starting off like sucking up. I love it. This is nice. This would be a good conversation. I love.
Yeah, he doesn't get that very much, so you have to excuse him.
I don't. The last feedback I've been getting have been a little explicit. And then whenever I share that kind of feedback, it always encourages other people. Like, oh, I'm gonna be funny. I'm gonna do. So I've been getting text messages on our hotline like, hey Josh, you suck. Like, oh, guys, I don't want to set that precedent. Like, but then I don't know whether it's Todd or the hotline. I have no idea.
So we had I don't know if you listen. I know you listened to the podcast. I don't know if you remember. We had a listener, a casual listener that basically said we suck. You could probably tell the story better, Josh.
Oh, Emily.
Everybody jumped on top of it.
Her name was Emily, or is Emily. I don't think anything's happened to her. And Emily wrote in, and because I always solicit feedback, and the subject line of the email was, "Here's some feedback for you," and the body just said, "You suck." And it was
my gosh.
Yeah, she probably. I said something. I've gotten complaints before.
Having a bad day.
Yeah, well, I made a joke at the expense of white women, and that old story, Matt. That old story.
Who
hasn't?
It's just I've not had been on the receiving end of an email that just says you suck yet, but you guys seem to be taking it in stride.
Oh yeah, again, because I hear it almost every day.
Yeah.
Nothing new.
No,
I don't put it as the main body of the email usually, but yeah,
my staff.
There's somewhere, right?
My staff reviews are terrible, and if anyone other than Todd was HR, I'd report it. But he is also HR, so I have nobody to report it to. Anyways, Matt, we are. It's been a while. I think we had you on 2019 to talk about Learn to Homebrew Day. You were on a great episode. And then now you're over at Bevie, which normally I do these episodes one-on-one. but I couldn't because Todd, first off, has told me if we're doing a show, I'd like to be on it. I like talking too. And then James, I couldn't keep James away because James is one of the biggest Grainfather fanboys I've ever known. James brewed some of the best beer of his I've ever had on the G40.
Just wore that machine out.
He wore that,
Yep.
and we still have it in the brew room. I'm afraid to touch it because it has been worn. I mean, it looks like he threw it down a hill. He used it so much. But anyway,
it still works though. It does still
It
work.
does.
it does still work. But let's start it off with, if you don't mind, a lot of people in North America.
But maybe you shouldn't have mentioned that, Josh, since they just loaned you one to use.
Oh yeah,
Well, they loaned it to him, not me.
that's right. I'm gonna
It's all yours now.
just send the bill to Todd. I'm sorry.
Oh, great.
No, yeah, we got to ship it back, but we are. So Todd, I'm not jumping that far ahead yet because we'll talk about the G40. But first, the name Bevie doesn't necessarily mean a lot to people in North America. So if you don't mind, what's the background of Bevie, the Grainfather units, their presence in North America, and just any kind of background history you can give us on Bevie and the Grainfather?
Sure. Yeah. So, Bevie is a organization that owns that distributes 4 different brands that probably most of your listeners might be familiar with. The Grainfather, which we're here to talk a little bit about, which is one of the original all-in-one electric home brewing systems. But we also make Mangrove Jacks, which is a brand that carries a lot of homebrew kits and yeast, as well as our lineup of still spirits distilling products. And we also carry, if anybody's familiar with our Mad Millie range, which is it's a whole range of cheese making, kombucha making, bread making kits. But yeah, definitely, I think that for the intents and purposes of most of the listeners of Homebrew Happy Hour, I would assume, or at least hope, that a lot of them are familiar with the Grainfather.
Yeah, and
I think everybody is.
G30.
I think it's a industry standard.
James, we get one of our most watched videos on our YouTube channel. It was a comparison video, but it's now been 4 years, right, James, since you recorded that? It was 2018,
3 or 4.
or if 2018, that would be 3 years. I'm bad at math. However long ago it was, it's one of our most watched videos, hundreds of thousands of views. And James very much pointed out in there, because people will ask all the time, well, I can get this other one for, $400, $500. And James was like, listen, with the Grainfather, you're getting what you pay for. He was very adamant that, there's a lot of features.
The Wi-Fi app and, just it's a whole different standard to the other ones. In my humble opinion, I think it's the best on the market.
Well, it's been one of those things that the Grainfather really was one of the first with these all-in-one electric systems, and it's gone through several iterations over the years, and now the original, what is called the Grainfather, which is actually behind me. Great content for your listening audience, but there's one on the screen. So the Grainfather has been around for a couple of years, but now it's called the Grainfather G30. And yeah, it's one of those things where this was the original all-in-one electric homebrewing system, and it's really been improved upon over the years. And I was thinking about this the other day about just how the way that this system has really taken on the market the last couple of years. I don't know if you guys pay attention to the outlet, the Brewlosophy podcast.
Oh yeah,
or Brewlosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
oh yes,
of course, Marshall and
great guys.
And Malcolm. Yeah, they run a survey every year that asks some of their listeners about what kind of homebrewing systems they use. And it's interesting to look at just the growth of these all-in-one electric systems, because I think they started asking that question in 2018, and I actually have it written here. In 2018, there were 13% of their listeners were using these all-in-one electric systems, and in 2021, that's jumped up to 33%. So wow. It's just kind of crazy to see the growth of these the all-in-one systems, and just over 3 years, 1 out of every 10 homebrewers was using an all-in-one electric system, and now. But again, just Brewlosophy listeners, but now just 1 out of every 3 of those responses is using one of those systems. So it's a huge movement in the hobby. And the Grainfather G30 is kind of the one that kicked it all off.
We did a survey, Matt, and of the 11 listeners we have, 90% of them have had experience with the Grainfather.
Wow.
So, yeah. I like to joke about how little Todd doesn't believe me that we have real people listening. It's fantastic.
I listen all the time. I actually have a question to clarify. Am I allowed to be on the show if I admit that I've never brewed a Kolsch before?
Oh, geez. Hold on.
Cut him off.
Yeah, that's it.
And that will do it for the
Credibility is shot.
No, that's fine. You know, you there's always time. You're a young guy. There's always time. One of my
I do
favorite.
have a Hellas on right now. Actually, I've got a little pour right here that came out really
Hellas.
well. Yeah.
James, what on tap? I'm changing the subject real quick. Is you use the Hellas or what is it on tap right now in the brew room, or pardon me, in the fermenter that you served me yesterday?
It's a Pilsner, and I was out of Cara Pils, and I put in Cara Hell in it.
That's what it
It's
was.
just single hop edition.
This has Carahel in it as well.
Oh, does it really?
It's all
Yeah, it turned out pretty
Vireman.
good.
It's got Vireman pills as the base, and then I've got a little bit of Munich malt in here and some Carahel, and then I used Hallertau. Oh gosh, I've never even tried to pronounce the second word in that. Mittelfru. Mittelfru. Hallertau Mittelfru. That's my only hop addition, and yeah, this is kind of my standard Helles recipe. It comes out really well.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I did 9. Let's see, on a 5-gallon batch, it'd be 9 pounds of just Pils and malt, and then I did about 1.5 pounds, I believe, 3 pounds total. I did 27 pounds of Pils and malt and 3 pounds of Carahel, and then I did 5 ounces of Saaz. We have a 15-gallon system, so I did a 15-gallon batch, and that was my grain bill.
Yeah, it's delicious. One of my favorite things is coming up to headquarters and whatever James brewed being poured for me. Like it's fantastic. I'm spoiled. Don't shake your head, James.
You can say that Todd he's the scientist. I mean, he's never had a bad batch, and I don't know how that's possible.
That is not true. I have definitely had bad
too,
batches
isn't it?
over
You
the
back
years.
me up, Josh.
I remember pouring a beer out around a bunch of guys at a campfire because I tried to drink it half the night, and I finally admitted it was so bad I just poured it out on the ground.
Yeah,
well, since I've known you, he's kind of he's like a surgeon when it comes to brewing. It's impressive.
One of the things I was going to say that I like about electric brewing, the Herm system for we're using that brow tag where we can make larger batches. But when James was using that Grainfather, one thing I had noticed was the ability to consistently brew the same beer, because consistency for most home brewers is that goal, right? It's that like I have this recipe and I brewed it like this one time, and then the next time it was off. Like we want consistent because if we nailed it one time, we want to nail it every time. Do you think that the reason all-in-ones like the Grainfather have taken off in popularity is because of that temperature control, consistent ability, as well as the footprint and other things? But what do you think is behind the popularity of an all-in-one like the Grainfather?
It's a really good question. I think the consistency thing is definitely one of the biggest pieces of it. I think also just the fact that you have everything just all in one piece of equipment, and you don't have to worry about such a huge footprint. I'm not a super technically minded home brewer. I see a lot of home brewers that really like to tinker with their equipment and build custom rigs, and that's just not me. I'm not a welder, and I'm not just the kind of person who's going to figure out how to build a recirculation system on my igloo cooler. So I think that's one of the best parts about the Grainfather system is that I get to have all of that in one piece of equipment, and I have the ability to recirculate my mash water easily, and I can do all that really fancy homebrewer stuff, that people talk who are more technically minded brewers and know the science behind why you need to do an alpha amylase rest and a beta amylase rest and a protein rest, all that stuff. I can program it ahead of time, like in the app, and then just put it in the system. And yes, there's some manual processes for doing the sparge and everything, but you get so much ability out of using one of these systems that is just a lot more manually intensive elsewise, or might need some special tools, or really know what you're doing to be able to pull it off the right way. And I think just having one of these systems and being able to plug it in and know that you can get your strike water temperature and hold it consistently is awesome to me. I think that's really one of the reasons for the popularity of them. And also, the fact that you're able to just sit there and control the brew day with your phone. I mean, the whole world's moving to their phone, right? So the fact that you're able to just walk into the other room and grab another beer or watch a football game or something while your mash is going on, you can just monitor it from the phone is.
Y'all heard it here.
Pretty sweet.
Matt Bolling is guaranteeing no boil overs when you leave the room. That is what I.
No, I did not say that.
No. It happens every time I turn my back on a boil. Every time I leave it for half a second, and Todd, we've caught it on an episode once when you were brewing. I think James, you too, right? I think we caught a boil. We've all been victims of the boil over.
I brewed Denny Kahn's rye IPA recently. And I don't brew with rye a ton. I think I've done it a couple batches with it before, but I think that just had a little more rye than I was used to. And just the amount of like proteins, I guess, that come in with the rye. It was difficult to control, making sure that I wasn't going to boil over when I was boiling, just because of that high protein level.
Yeah. James, I want to ask you because, like I said, you almost have more knowledge of Grainfather than I think a lot of people who worked in that side of it. What was it for you that got, I mean, I remember Todd won it, right?
I went from a cooler setup, all grain setup, to when I started working for Todd, he was like, oh, by the way, I have this. And he explained what it was. I didn't know they existed. And he said, if you want to use, and I grabbed it and said, thanks. I brewed on it for 2 years solid. I don't know how many batches. I did a lot of batches of beer through that machine. Never had an issue. Well, there's one, the Roggen beer, but that's my fault.
That's a complicated grain bill.
It's terrible beer. Let me tell you.
So I had to look up that Denny Kahn's rye IPA because I love rye beers. How did yours turn out? I don't know how long ago you brewed it.
It was about a year ago, actually. When I say the other day, time is very linear.
I do this. People make fun of me. People make fun of me for saying the other day when I mean 10 years ago all the time. So I understand.
Yeah, the other day was a year ago. I don't really remember. I remember it came out great. I hit all my target OGs. And that, it goes back to the consistency of the system. I'm able to really know that I'm going to get 80% brew house or mash efficiency out of it. And I know that exactly how much sparge water to use when it's another benefit of using the app, right? You put your recipe in and it just spits out at you. Okay. You're going to want 3.7 gallons of sparge water. So the beer came out great because again, I'm able to really produce a consistent beer on it.
I think the recirculation is the key on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I mean, I like the Grainfather, but frankly, the problem I have with it is I just don't like to brew. I don't like to brew 5-gallon batches anymore. Do you have a solution for that by chance?
Do you like to brew bigger or smaller?
Bigger.
Oh yeah. Well, we're here to talk about the.
I know that's why I said that. I'm joking. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have our new Grainfather G40 system. So those who have been listening to us wax poetic about the Grainfather G30, who's been on the market, for several years now and has really become a staple in the hobby. The G40 is our latest system, and it's a bigger capacity system. So you, instead of having to make, because the amount of grain volume that you can fit into the original Grainfather G30 is a little bit limited. So you can only get up to about 7.5% alcohol on it. Whereas the G40, I guess I should cover why it's called that. The G30 makes 30 liters of beer. The G40 makes 40 liters. And we also have our largest system, which is the G70, which makes 70 liters of beer. Now, I know most of the people listening to the podcast have no idea what that breaks down to gallon wise. Yeah, right. So the G30, the original Grainfather, typically makes about 5 gallons of beer. The new system, the G40, makes about 10, and the G70 makes about 15 gallons. Really big batches. So yeah, the new G40 is out now. We just rolled it out, and it's pretty sleek. We've taken everything that we've learned over the last 10 years of innovating with the original G30 and just built the Ferrari of homebrewing systems. I think
it's super nice looking. Like it is.
Yeah.
It is. It's almost intimidating. You send us a demo unit. We're going to do some video content on a brew day. It's going to be titled "Can an Idiot Brew on This?" And it's me. And I think I can because of how slick it is. So yeah, Todd, thank you for that beautiful segue. Perfect. Chef's kiss. Matt, describe like the G40. Y'all have had the G70 out for a while. And the G30, did y'all just see a market for people wanting not quite 15, but bigger than 5? And also to talk about the features on it, because that's the coolest part to me is the technology that's actually on this thing, the bells and the whistles.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, we wanted a system that didn't have to be quite 15 gallons. And there were also, some things that we wanted to make different about the G40. So to cover off a couple things about it, again, the typical batch volume on it is about 10 gallons. But if you wanted to do a really, really high ABV 5-gallon batch, you could fit the grain in there that you need to make a 12 or 15% or something like that. It is only a 220 volt system. So I think that's something that is important to cover off, especially for a lot of folks who might not know a ton about electric homebrewing systems. The original Grainfather G30 is available in 2 different versions. You can buy one as just a normal 110 volt socket, which is what most Americans are used to using. That's what your standard plug looks like. I believe it's a 120 volt socket. But it also is available as a 220 volt system. So the rest of the world, not only does the US not use the metric system, but we don't use 220 volt, 240 volt power like most of the world. That's pretty standard. And so the system actually, since you're brewing so much volume of wort, if we were to make this system as 110 volts, it really wouldn't be doing anybody much of a favor because it would take just so long to get that amount of wort up to boil. So it is only available as a 220 volt option. And in order to do that, you do need a specialized 240 volt plug. So you can't just plug in a G40 into your normal wall socket. The plug actually looks like this. This is a NEMA 615.
Oh, okay. So it's a 615. I thought it was a 30. Okay.
No,
I know that's definitely not a NEMA 30. I just assumed it was. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's like what you use for AC systems in.
That's right.
For window units, for 220 window units. Okay.
And then most people will find a plug behind their dryer or behind their oven that is most U.S. households come 220 volt plugs are in those 2 places, and you typically would find a plug that looks kind of like this. So this is just a converter that you can get that plugs one end into the Grainfather G40 and then one end into the socket that you would find behind your
standard.
The standard. And these are $20 or so off of Amazon.
Yeah, we're big fans of Amazon. That is,
right. Or your local hardware store, I should say. It's 220 volt system. So you got 3,300 watts of power. So you're really able to get up to boil on this thing pretty quick. And you mentioned some of the fun bells and whistles about this thing. We've really redesigned the Grainfather from the ground up, the Grainfather G30, and put in a lot of improvements into this thing. So at the bottom of the heating element actually covers the entire base of the unit. So you're getting a really gentle heat. So you're kind of avoiding a lot of that scorching that you would get on some of the other systems, because if you're only certain parts of your wort is coming in contact with the heat, then what happens is you get more caramelization that you actually want, and you might actually develop a scorched layer on that heating element. So we've really kind of taken that.
Done that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said you had a question.
No, I've done that. That was the Roggen beer that I did.
Yep.
It was terrible.
So the fact that the heating element is just much larger takes that's much more surface contact, which is really great for avoiding that scorching issue. And then also the pump within the unit can actually handle temperatures up to 100 up to almost boiling temperature. So you avoid some of those cavitation issues that you get with some pumps, where you get like an air bubble trapped in there, and then all of a sudden you're running a dry pump. So it's you got a lot of new features on it. Especially one of the new things that we're really happy to talk about and roll out is, anybody that's familiar with a Grainfather G30 or the G70 is familiar with what's called the overflow pipework that goes down the middle of the unit. And the reason for that is that you want to always have consistent flow down through the pump, so you're recirculating your mash to get better brew house efficiency. And also, again, it goes back to that heating issue. You don't want to just have one piece of your wort be heated all the time. So this new grain basket actually gets rid of the overflow pipe work, and it's kind of hard to show it's a great, I definitely recommend people going to the grainfather.com and try to get a little more of a visual on it, because it's kind of hard to describe on a podcast. But we've improved the grain basket flow to where you're actually going to not have to rely on an overflow pipework to recirculate your mash. And then obviously the best part about it is you're able to control this through your phone, through a Wi-Fi connection. And like I said, if you're at home and you're getting ready to mash out, you have a timer right there on your phone. It tells you exactly what your mash temperature is, how much time is left. And it does a lot of fun things too, where it'll send you a push notification to remind you now is a good time to start heating up your sparge water to get ready for sparging, which is something that I forget all the time.
Yeah.
So you're really able to just get that monitoring of your system and temperature control really just brings the home brewing your beers to a whole new level.
It seems like a good blend of, because I get my ads on Facebook that are shown to me, and it's probably because my cell phone heard me talking about it one time, and so now it just bombards me with ads. Sure. Like I used to get a bunch of Pico Brew, and now I get one called Beer Maker, or I think it's Beer. I think they pronounce it Beer Maker, but MAKR. I don't know if y'all have seen that one. The Grainfather seems like the good blend between automation and brewing, because one of the biggest gripes I see people when those like truly like the Picos and those kind of ones come out, they're like, I don't feel like I'm brewing. I feel like it's a Keurig at this point, right? Where there is no mistake. Like with the Grainfather, like all this automation stuff we're talking about is like icing on the cake of a brew day. It's not like you said, there's still a lot of manual processes going on that people, I mean, me personally, I love that part of home brewing, the pouring in the grains and setting the sparge and doing all that. Like you're still brewing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Grainfather, the original G30 was developed by a man named Peter Eastwood in New Zealand. So the Grainfather and Bevie is based out of New Zealand. And he opened a homebrew business in I believe it was the late 80s, 1989, and engineered the original Grainfather system. So this is a product that's been built by homebrewers for homebrewers, essentially. And he felt at the time, I think he's since retired, so I don't have the opportunity to ask him questions about the history of it. But he saw that kits were really popular in New Zealand, and he wanted to be able to give homebrewers there a little bit more control over their brew day. And so he designed this system, and it just grew in popularity over time. But it didn't really come to the U.S. until I think 2014, 2015. These systems have really just changed the whole homebrewing landscape. It's kind of like like the British invasion of the 60s, when the Beatles came over from the UK and revolutionized music. It's almost like the Grainfather came over from New Zealand and revolutionized homebrewing.
Oh, totally. No, we see it.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
It was awesome.
I knew James used it very frequently and consistently.
Yeah, it was so cool to be able to maintain temperature batch after batch, and the recirculation. The end result was amazing. It was so different. It made me look and feel like a better brewer, even though I probably wasn't. It was the equipment. So I've always said it's about the tools. You have good tools, you'll have good results.
Absolutely.
And it's a good tool.
I started this podcast to make me look like a good home brewer, guys. So
I mean, like I said earlier, it's a system that can be used by anyone. If you are an extract brewer and you want to get into all grain, everything's there for you. Or if you are like me and you're one of those home brewers that takes that relax, don't worry, have a homebrew mentality just a little too far. Like on my brew day, if I just tend to, the brew day goes how it goes. If I have a boil over, it's still going to be beer at the end, right. These kind of systems really make you a better home brewer because you have that kind of control over your entire brew day.
I have a question for you. We, on the draft side of stuff, we did a video for Homebrew Con last year for 2020, the first one online, and then we specialize in draft solutions. But one of the things that older customers or people with compromised bats or grinding disc or whatever in their neck or spine, one of the things that they like kegerators for instead of keezers is because the keezer you have to kind of bend over and pick up the keg and it kind of hurts. With the bigger Grainfathers like the G70, which has been out for a while, or G40, do y'all have any kind of recommendation? Like, do you have people saying, oh, I'd love to get it, but I'm gonna have to get a crank, whatever those lifts are called, to help me out? Or do you find like with the G40, because like for me, you can ask Todd, like even if it's heavy, I'm a prideful man. I'll be like, oh, I got it. and then go to the hospital later. But like, do y'all have any kind of like, recommendations like, hey, your grain bill could be potentially this heavy, soaking wet or whatever, prepare for that?
Yeah, we do recommend, and it's in our directions and it's printed on all of our warnings about the system is, we're talking a lot about the G30 because it's the one that most people are familiar with the most. That the grain basket on that, and for people who, again, maybe aren't familiar with electric brewing systems, you can almost think of it as like brewing a bag, but instead of a bag, you're brewing with a little metal basket that goes inside your boil kettle. And on the smallest system, the G30, it's pretty easy for one person to lift it up. I have a G70 and, I have done it on my own before, but I'm hoping nobody's looking. I'll put it that way, because I don't look very good doing it, because I'm really straining. The G40, I think that you could do it. It's definitely recommended to have a second person help you with it. What we do also recommend it for people who maybe don't have a partner to help them out is to get a winch. And you can attach it to a cross beam in your ceiling, and you can either crank it up by hand or you can get, one of the fancy electric ones. And that would definitely be my recommendation because a full G70 grain basket is definitely a two-person job.
We had a failure of a brew day on a prototype for the spike all-in-one that they had. And I'm just so prideful whenever it came time to lifting it up, to drip. I mean, we had a bunch of issues with it before that, but the guy we were brewing with, like, oh, I think it's time. You want me to help you? He's like, help, I can do this. And my neck is still hurting. It's been it's been 2 years.
It was just the other day, right?
Yeah.
We were just talking about scorched grain earlier too, weren't we, Josh?
That was another issue.
How did that beer went through the weirdest flavor profile ever during?
Do you remember when we poured it off the back of my back of my porch finally?
Oh, I do. It was disgusting. It was a lot. And like I said, I don't know. I busted my neck for nothing. It was a waste. But yeah, I wanted to ask that, Matt, because I know we get that a lot. Like people, our hobby, I am thankful that it is very diverse in age and race and gender. There's a lot of people homebrewing, and funny enough, the lockdown kind of made that more proliferated, right? Like there is more people brewing now in our country, I believe. I might be just making this up, but it feels like there's way more people brewing than ever. So I'm sure y'all felt that boom too of people like, oh, I want to, and the Grainfather is a fantastic tool for any knowledge of brewing, but specifically getting people from extract into all grain. Do you find that the all-in-one, like the G30 or the G40 or the G70, is a lot of people's footstep into all grain brewing, and then they might start doing herms, or they might start doing barrel systems, or you know what I mean? Like, is the Grainfather that gateway for people into more precise, passionate brewing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can still do extract brewing on the Grainfather. All you have to do is you're just taking the grain basket out and pouring in your water and your extract. I actually do extract brewing on my on the G70 and on the G30 because I have a 2-year-old and another one coming in February. So a full brew day can still it takes it's a decent Saturday, so I find that extract brewing is actually one of the ways that I can cut time and still come out with a great product, because you're still, again, with the systems that we have for getting your wort down to yeast pitching temperature quickly, and you're able to control your fermentation temperature with our conical fermenters. There's so much that goes into creating a beer that is not just in the malt. If you have the correct, precise temperature control on the cold side and great yeast health, you don't have to go all the way, So somebody who's an extract brewer and wants to get into all grain, I get it when sometimes people see the garage full of home brewing equipment, right? It can be intimidating. I actually live in an area where my garage kind of opens up to the neighborhood, and I have a lot of home brewing equipment all in my garage. And you always get people who walk by and just kind of raise an eyebrow like, what
are you doing?
Is he doing?
Is that legal?
Yeah, right. So, I think that I think about it as, I always think about how people get into homebrewing compared to like other hobbies, I think it's easy for somebody to get into like photography these days because everybody has a phone with a camera, and then you can get like a nice DSLR camera or something for a fairly decent price these days. Or gardening or something, it's fairly easy to do. And homebrewing, I think that these all-in-one systems are a great way of welcoming new people into the hobby, because I think the Grainfather makes it not look like such a difficult thing. If I were a professional brewer, I would say capital intensive thing to get into the hobby. So, I mean, if you see somebody brewing on a Grainfather, you're like, well, that's it. That's all I really need. That's all you really need.
That is all you really need.
It is all you really need. It's funny you mentioned the extract part, because, everybody talks about taking an extract brewer and turning them into an all grain brewer. But the answer for turning an all grain brewer into an extract brewer is almost always the same. It's called a baby, right? So
yeah, right.
I hear so many people say that they've always brewed all grain, and now they're brewing extract because they had some kids. So
that's another benefit of these electric systems too, is there's no open flame. And that's something that's very top of mind for me when I can't just leave my 2-year-old in the garage to find whatever else she's going to discover out there. And, just eliminating that factor of having an open flame and a 2-year-old running around, is huge for me.
Yeah, congrats on the new one, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Because when you were last on, you had just had your first child. So
that's right.
So when you have your other one in 2 more years, we'll bring you back on again for your third kid.
We'll just have you on every couple of years.
Yeah. Every time I have
Josh,
a kid.
Josh knows all about that.
Yeah, he
Dude,
does.
I've got 3 daughters. What's the gender of the one coming in February?
We don't know. Not going to find out.
Hey, good for y'all. So I'm nosy. I'm so nosy. I want to know, like, naming sake. But you could have, if it's a boy, it's this. If it's a girl, it's this, and name there at the hospital.
Future little home brewer, that's for sure.
There you
That's
go.
awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, when you talk about the garage thing, that it is funny when you are brand new to the hobby or seeing someone who has all that stuff. Like you said, it can be very intimidating because your brain doesn't know how to process the use of this equipment, right? Like even when my pop and I use a cooler brewing system, the igloo coolers and the kettle and all that, people will come over and like, oh my gosh, what are y'all doing? And it's like, well, this is just a hot liquor tank and this is just a mash. You know, I mean, like when you explain it to people, it demystifies it. And that is one of my favorite things about all-in-ones and the Grainfather specifically is it's done a great job since its introduction in demystifying home brewing, so where it does make it okay. So the grains go in here, and then the water, and that's getting the sugars, and I lift it up and getting that because that's going to be my wort now. And now we're done with the grains because it does make it easy to understand the whole process.
I think another thing that helps that too is something that always surprises me, or maybe surprises people I'm talking to about Grainfather systems, is the app connectivity. It really is, I think that a lot of people see the igloo cooler and then, or whatever, the traditional 3-vessel homebrewing system, we'll say. And I did that for years and years. But then you talk to somebody and you mentioned that, no, I'm controlling the entire brew day from my phone. Check it out. And they see that, you're really just monitoring temperatures and are able to make those changes from your phone is something that always just takes people by surprise. And I think really brings them in. It really piques their interest because, we're all, as I mentioned before, we're all moving to our phones these days. So the experience of homebrewing in your hand, you're still homebrewing, but being able to just take a piece of that control and put it onto your smart devices, it really, really piques new hobbyists' interest, I've found.
My mic was muted. Sorry. It also gives me a fantastic excuse to have because normally on a brew day, Todd knows I'm not involved because I'm on my phone the whole time. But when we film with this, now Todd, you're not going to know. You're not going to know. You go, wait.
I'll know.
You'll know. He'll go to my Instagram and go, yeah, that's what I thought. He's posting stuff because he thinks he's funny. Wrapping up with the G40 stuff, and then we'll move on some other things. It is available already retail, or is it pre-order? I forget how it's working right now with the availability. The idea was to have it ready for holiday 2021 right now. So it is available, or is it pre-order?
It's available. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I actually see it online right now at More Beer. In fact, they have the 70, the 40, and the 30 in stock, which is pretty impressive. So
we'll have a link in the show notes.
As I'm sure everybody who has been paying attention to the state of the global shipping industry, global shipping knows that things are very slow to get overseas and stuff now, and we've been really looking forward to getting this product into the U.S. for a while. I think it's still not available in all overseas markets, but it is here in the U.S. And I mean, this is available at your favorite local homebrew retailer or grainfather.com. This is, and we got a couple of units actually out to a few folks in advance, and we're able to get them to do some reviews for us. So, if you've not had a chance to see the Grainfather G40 in action, I definitely recommend going to YouTube and just finding one of your local, not your local homebrew shop, sorry, but one of your favorite YouTube homebrewing reviewers, and see what they've got to say, because I think you'll be happy.
I think you'll be happy. I like that. I love the confidence. Yeah. When I send stuff out to review about us, I don't solicit people to then go look at it because I get the review. I'm like,
please don't listen to me.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh, don't try my beer. I do want to ask about. Well, I want to ask about the still spirit stuff, but first, I know y'all had conicals. I forget. Do y'all do it with? The only one I know y'all have for sure is for the 5-gallon batches. Do y'all have conicals for 10-gallon and 15-gallon?
So we have the conical that we have that's been available for a while is called the GF30, and the way that we've broken out we've kind of gone through a little bit of a rebranding process recently because of, as I mentioned, we've been talking a lot about the G40 and the G30, and people used to call the G30 the Grainfather, right? And it became a bit of a challenge because we have a whole host of products that aren't just the Grainfather. We have the G30, the G70, the G40, and we also have the GF30, which is our conical fermenter, which is behind me, which pairs with our glycol chiller. So this is actually a jacketed fermenter that, again, you can control the temperature from your phone, and you can be sipping a martini on the beach or something and do a diacetyl rest.
That's what I do.
It's pretty sweet.
That is cool.
But the way that we've split up the new systems is anything you see from the Grainfather that has a G in front of it is what we're calling the G series. And that indicates that it actually has phone connectivity. We also recognize that not everybody wants to have all the bells and whistles. Maybe they want a more straightforward system that they don't need to have all that built in, again, all the top of the line stuff. So we also have the S40, which is the same thing essentially as the G40, but without phone connectivity. You're still able to control the temperatures through a controller on the unit, and it still has the same pump power, the same voltage. So and that comes in at a lower price point for people who want to get into electric brewing, but maybe don't want everything that the G40 has. And we also, back to your question, you knew I was going to come back to it. We also did just recently launch the SF70 conical fermenter, which again is kind of a nuts and bolts, larger conical fermenter. So it doesn't have any of the phone connectivity because it's part of our S series products, which again do not have any sort of smartphone connectivity. But it holds up to 15 gallons of beer, and you're able to control it with our glycol chiller with an adapter that we just came out with that you're able to insert into the unit and pump glycol through it through a coil, the glycol chiller adapter. So again, the Grainfather is a system that we've had on the market for a while, but we have a whole series, two whole series of units and products that not just control your brew day, but the cold side as well. So, it's you don't have to just the Grainfather is a whole host of I'm losing my train of thought here.
No, dude, I
just keep rambling.
No,
now.
I did it first. I started it first at the beginning of the show.
Thank you. Bring me back.
No, yeah, well, it's temperature control is crucial. Yeah. And I think that's what anyone brewing, whether they start with extract or they join their friend who's been brewing forever, I think that's one thing you come to learn quick is having temperature control for your brew day, for your mash, and having temperature control post-boil stuff for your fermentation is a make or break, right, for good beer. Like when you have all those dialed in, you're more likely to make consistently good beer. That's what that's what you were getting at. I knew.
That's what I
knew.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I know. Let's real quick before I had a couple questions and we kind of covered them already, but I told these guys I'd give them $25 gift cards anyway because I told them I'd give it to them, so I have to ask their questions. But before we do that, I'm interested in the still spirits because I know in New Zealand where it's legal, we've discussed this, there are turbo condensers and stuff that are accessories for like the G30 for people who are into distilling. In the States, it's like if I want to make my essential oils or whatever, totally legal. But that stuff, the still spirits line, have you all seen with an uptick in home brewing since COVID became a thing in lockdowns, has also those products taken off too?
I think it's not just COVID, but I think that you mentioned earlier that homebrewing has really taken on a new life during the pandemic, and it's true. There's a lot of people who are at home and are looking for something to do, and there's a lot of people investing in their homes right now, not just getting into homebrewing, but people, building
hobbies
decks
in general.
Like
that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, we put in, I say that from experience, I put in a deck. But yeah, it's one thing that we've seen really start to be more of a, it's gaining a lot of momentum, I would say, in the U.S. The still spirits lineup of products are actually modular. So as you mentioned, you can actually take a look at our Turbo 500 condenser column, which actually is fitted to go on to the original Grainfather G30, and there may or may not be a adapter for the G40 coming out here in the next year or so. I can neither confirm nor deny that. So it's been interesting to see the growth of the homebrewing hobby over the last 10 years, and I think we're actually at the cusp of growth in a whole new section of this home fermentation journey that everybody is on.
I just like the ease of use. I have a friend who I won't throw him under the bus on here because I don't think distilling is illegal completely in our, like, everywhere in our country, right? It's a federal.
It's federally illegal, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like, I think shipping beer. I don't know. I live in a gray area, my friend, and a buddy of mine was really into it, and I have an all-in-one that I was like, they make adapters for this, dude, and I don't know what you can yield, how much essential oil you can yield off of the G30, but I told him, I was like, for home making your legal essential oils, dude, get these adapters, because like you said, they're modular, and it makes the system just versatile.
You get out about 2 liters, I believe, and we have a whole lineup of products that when you are when you're doing your distilling run, you're making a neutral spirit, and our still spirits lineup of products actually has these flavorings that you add to your neutral spirit that you get out of the Turbo 500, and so there's a whole world of ways that you can really tinker with your distilling experience, where if you want to make a Jamaican dark rum, or you want to make a Tennessee whiskey, or you want to make a gold spiced rum or something like that, we have about 120 different flavorings that you can actually use to create whatever you want. So for people who are interested in that piece of the hobby, I would definitely recommend taking a look at that still spirits lineup and see if it's something you might want to give a shot to.
And YouTube. Go ahead, Todd. Go ahead.
What is there's the 500. There's also I'm going to butcher the name. It's at Alembic.
There's the Alembic Copper Dome.
I did say it right. Wow, that's a first.
Yeah. So those are two different attachments for the G40. For the G30.
Okay, I actually have one of those, and I have never used it, but I was thinking I'd like to get it out and use it sometime. And I have the heating unit for it. I think it's also called a 500, if I remember right.
Yep.
But my understanding is that would be more in line with people making whiskey, or what's the reason for the differences in them?
Sure. So, you can kind of think, we actually have 3 different products. I think that would be a good way of breaking it down.
Okay.
We have something called the air still. So when you're doing craft distillation, what you're doing is you're getting your wash, which is undistilled alcohol. So a base, you can distill a beer.
It's like beer.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say you wanted to distill your beer. You would call it a wash at that point. You would be getting that up in an enclosed boiler up to about 170 degrees Fahrenheit at the point where the alcohol vapors are actually rising off of the liquid, but it's not boiling the water. And what you're doing is those vapors are rising through the still, and you're actually running groundwater through the chamber, the condenser, to get that vapor back down to liquid temperature. And as it rises, it's cooling, and you'll see when you look at it online, there's a little tube at the top that it condenses back into a liquid and drops down into your collection vessel. And anybody that's interested in learning more about craft distillation, I definitely recommend going to the Still Spirits site. But back to my point about the 3 different systems, we have what's called the air still, which is it's just like a countertop desktop system. You could be distilling at work and people wouldn't really, it looks like a coffee machine. And instead of relying on water to cool down the alcohol vapors, it actually has a really powerful fan that is cooling the vapors. And you're able to get a small amount of really decent home distillate out of it. And then if people want to get a little bit more advanced, what you would look at getting into would be one of our Turbo 500 units, which I've been talking about mostly. And that is what you're doing is it's a reflux still. So essentially you are getting a neutral spirit out of it, like vodka or, use it to make gin. And then, if you want to flavor it with one of our extracts, you can do that. And then Todd, as you mentioned, there's the alembic dome and condenser. And I think that has a little bit more of what people expect to see when they see like some sort of home distillation unit. It's got the racking arm that kind of tilts over. And yeah, that is designed to not strip out as many of those flavors from your wash. So it's used to make a lot more of those, complex spirits like whiskey and rum that have a lot more heavy flavors in them.
Okay. Yeah.
Todd, are you committing to making one right now? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it's illegal, but I was thinking about maybe going to Zealand. I was thinking about taking a vacation in New Zealand,
right,
and then making some there. Or we could make it at your house. If the feds are listening, we'll probably make it at Josh's house in about 2 weeks if you want to stop by.
I'm too lazy to edit that out. Yeah, come and get me. They're building up a whole big case. Like, okay, so we got them on Dogecoin, tax evasion, and distilling. Yeah, they're going
to be disappointed when they show up at your house.
They'd be so disappointed for a multitude of reasons.
The DEA is actually at my door right now. So
yeah, the DEA they're listening in real time. Oh my God.
And that's something too. I think that I wanted to bring up while we're talking about this is that there are a lot of people working towards making it legal in the United States. Mm-hmm. It's been a movement for a while now. I'm actually a member of an organization, and eventually it would be nice. There's really no reason for it to be illegal any more than brewing beer was illegal at one time in the United States. And it's probably something that we all need to work towards so we can get that law changed.
I don't know the specific states off the top of my head, but there are some states where it is legal, but it is still federally illegal. Yeah. So the way that homebrewing went was it was legalized in 1978, and it didn't actually get not all 50 states ratified their constitutions to make it legal until 2013. So it took 40 years.
Alabama was one of the last ones, wasn't it?
I think it was Alabama and Mississippi. Yeah.
Because I remember a homebrew shop opening up in like 2013, like legally. Like it wasn't a speakeasy homebrew shop anymore. Or like they're able to actually talk about why, why are people buying all these grains and these hops? Like, I don't know what they're doing with that stuff. I have no idea.
I was on staff with the Homebrewers Association when that actually happened. And, I probably am getting some of the details wrong, but I remember the way that we were trying to get legislation passed in Alabama and Mississippi at the same time. And one of those had a statute in their state constitution that said any law that gets signed by the governor has to go into effect like 180 days after it's signed or something. But the other one, where it was also illegal, and I can't remember which one, did not have that stipulation. And they realized that essentially, again, broad strokes, that when the other state signed their constitution saying homebrewing is going to be legal here in 180 days, they realized we don't want to be the last state in the country to legalize homebrewing. So let's rush this through and we're going to legalize homebrewing. And then, it became legal the next day, essentially.
So nice.
They were the last ones to sign legislation to legalize homebrewing, but they were not the last ones where it was actually legal.
Yeah.
And again, I can't,
because everyone laughs at the last one, like, oh,
right, exactly.
Matt,
technically they both came in last.
Yeah, they both. Yeah, they were both antiquated. Yeah, with Texas, we don't have very good beer laws or gun laws, But anyway, we so enough about antiquated laws and my feelings towards those. I have a couple questions. We'll be quick on them. We appreciate your time. Patrick wrote in, or he texted into our hotline at 325-305-6107, and we're gonna kind of just recap because we did discuss it way earlier in the top of the show. But what is the Matt's grain bill for the new G40, and what are the power requirements?
Yep, it's 26 pounds. So that again comes out. I think you can make a little over 10 pounds of 10 gallons of beer. I think it comes out to be about 10 and a half with, trub loss and transfer loss. And then, we mentioned the 240 volt, 330 watt, and it comes with that NEMA 615 plug, like I had mentioned before.
And do you recommend instead? I mean, I don't know. Can you make if I was going to make a brewing area in my garage and put in a 220, I wouldn't put in that 615. I'd probably put in like that other one you were showing and just get the adapter. Right? That's probably the most common implementation for getting a G40 into a brewing space. Yeah,
that's what I would do.
Seems easy enough. Like you said, the adapters, when you're already, one of the things homebrewers come to learn is it costs stuff to brew, and a $20 adapter is a very minimal cost in the bigger picture of having a universal plug that you can use for some other purpose in the future if you stop brewing.
Yeah, this is like a standard plug for 220, 240.
That's for a generator, or it's used a lot for generators. But they would make one just like that you could have that would be a NEMA 30, which is for the 30 amp that you would use for your clothes dryer, or a NEMA 50, which is what you would use on your range. So you can get adapters for both of those.
It looks like this is a 30.
Perfect. Todd prides himself on knowing power. Ask him about.
Well, that's one of the quick discs that you twist in. It locks in.
Right.
Yeah. So most people's dryer is going to have the 4 prongs that kind of go in like this. So yeah.
We actually use the 30 on our Brautag controller.
We do. We use that same connection. Yeah.
Perfect. So then you're telling me I'm good to go when we're doing the video at the barn. We'll have a plug for it, is what you're saying.
I don't know what you have. We'll see. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to make it work.
We can get there.
But all right. Last question, and then we're wrapping up this episode. John C. wrote in at homebrewhappyhour.com. He said, I am going to begin my all grain journey after brewing partial mash for several months. I've never had to calculate for brew house efficiency before. Is there a chart for this? Or do you know how I can pinpoint the efficiency number on, say, a Grainfather? Does knowing efficiency even matter? I have a Brewfather account now, which has an entry field asking for brew house efficiency and mash efficiency. I'm hoping you can help me understand. I love the podcast. Matt, I won't throw you under the bus to be like, what is the number? What is this? But I imagine with any electric one, it's pretty easy to dial in. So how would you address John's question?
Yeah, well, he kind of asked several things here. I think you first have to split out what is mash efficiency versus brew house efficiency. So mash efficiency is basically taking into account how much of the sugar was extracted during your mash, how much you were able to convert those starches into sugars from the grain. Brew house efficiency takes into account some of the losses that are going to happen on brew day, like the hop absorption of the wort, boil off, trub and transfer losses, and all those things that really affect your final gravity. So they are a little bit different. Brew house efficiency is important for getting the most from your grains and hitting your target original gravity. So it's very important to have we were talking about consistency earlier of knowing what your system's brew house efficiency, mash and brew house efficiency is, because not hitting your targets means that your beer might be a bit thin or might be lower than ABV than you wanted. So actually all of our Grainfather systems, we've run test after test after test. And we've come up with a standard setting of 80% mash efficiency. But that really is dependent on a lot of things. The amount of grain that you're using, what your grain crush is, what your sparging methods, the specific recipes. So we tell people, to expect anywhere between 75 to 85% mash efficiency on any Grainfather system. And that's pretty darn good. When I was using my Igloo cooler, I think I would get like 60, 65.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've really got it dialed in. And, the fact that you're recirculating your mash, your wort, the whole mash water the whole time really ensures that you are extracting as much of that sugar from those starches as possible.
And once you do have it dialed in, John, we use Brewer's Friend, which, funny enough, our friend Lorena Evans just arrived, I think, to headquarters here. We're going to do an episode and some stuff with her, too. But we use Brewer's Friend. But Brewfather, same difference. Once you have it dialed in and you put it in your recipe, that gives you the most realistic expectations for your numbers. Like that's why it's real important to, when you get it dialed in, to know. That way you know what your gravity is going to be. Or it just makes it smoother is not the word I'm looking for, but it makes it a more like, it's always satisfying when I brew any given recipe and I hit the numbers I'm supposed to, because the efficiency and everything's all there, right? That's what I'm getting at. When you know what it is. And like you said, the Grainfather community is pretty huge, and part of the connectivity that people get with these new systems and all that is access to that community, right? So they can log into Grainfather and look at all these different recipes and these people are brewing on the same equipment, therefore the numbers are probably pretty trustworthy.
Yeah, there are thousands of recipes in the Grainfather app. I mean, if you find any kind of recipe from one of your local retailers, chances are it's actually somebody probably already put it in the app. So it's real easy to just copy it over to your profile, and you're able to just set up your brew day from that. I mean, you just go in and you click, I'm ready to brew this beer, and you can adjust the recipe to the Grainfather system. And when you set the system up for the first time, it comes with those brewing calculations, those efficiencies preloaded. So you don't even have to worry about typing that stuff in. If you want, you can go back and tweak it. You can change some of those numbers based on, again, some things that I mentioned, like your grain crush and stuff like that, if you like a finer crush. But it comes with a standard of that 80% I mentioned. And then also, there's specific numbers on boil loss and things like that in there that you can go in and tweak as you like.
Absolutely.
So it's all just sitting right there for you.
Yeah, that accessibility is a huge hurdle that if we can get people over, that will grow the hobby even more, right? Like it's ease of use, accessibility, all of those things I use synonymously. Like the easier we can make it on people to learn the craft, the better for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Matt, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. I know I went way over small talking. Once we were talking stills and spirits and the stuff I should edit out, but I'm not gonna, and all that stuff. So I appreciate you letting me digress a bunch and for your time. Like I said, we've been fans of Grainfather for a very long time.
I appreciate you having me. I'll just let you know next time that I'm having another kid, and I'll get on here.
And we'll get you.
We're looking forward to it. Yeah.
Congrats
Absolutely.
on the new kid, and congrats on the launch of the G40. It is in the show notes, friends. Y'all can see it all there. Links to the new G40, and we are going to have some video content. But like Matt said too, the beautiful thing about living in 2021 is everyone and their mothers has a YouTube channel. So there's already content on there if you want to see what people think about the G40. But wait for our content, because my opinion probably matters the most to you, is if I had to guess. So anyway,
yeah, you guys have a unit. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about it, because you said you haven't brewed on it yet, right?
No.
He hasn't been here. We just got it, so we're anxious to brew on it, though. Definitely,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a listener and you want to make sure you get a accurate depiction of it, then yeah, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on what you think of the
great. We'll let you know. All right, Matt, thank you so much for your time, man.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, Imperial Yeast. You'll get a free pack of Imperial Yeast with your monthly recipe kits when you join our Trub Club at homebrewhappyhour.com/club or patreon.com/homebrewhappyhour. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.